Welcome to my PowerPoint on broken Hearthstone cards. Let's start with Death Knight. Accolade of Death. 3 mana 2/4 after a friendly undead dies, draw a card. Crop Rotation. 3 mana spell, summon 4 1/1 undead with rush that die at the end of the turn. Sickly Grimewalker. Was 3 mana, now is 4 mana, 3/5 undead after you summon an undead give it poisonous. Card draw, removal, corpses. Yeah, it's gamer time. Typically I don't handle my PowerPoints like this. I just wanted to talk about this little combo because it was really strong. It did get nerfed, and it's just kind of a fun combo. Like, what more is there to say? Sickly Grimewalker is really, really strong as a card. It's still pretty good with crop rotation. This whole Accolade of Death crop rotation thing is still pretty good. Accolade of Death is in the core set, so you could still do them together. I think that, like, if there's ever anything like that makes a non-even Death Knight good enough in Wild, it's definitely these cards. They just draw you so much. They give you so much tempo on board, and, like, yes, we're kind of not in, like, a meta where something like Sickly Grimewalker would matter. The Sickly Grimewalker was significantly better in a Miracle Rogue meta where you had to deal with all those giants that Miracle Rogue was dealing with. Sickly Grimewalker is way better there, but in a kind of like hyper aggro meta, these cards don't really do much because, well, you just have better cards for like hyper aggro and dealing with that in Death Knight, right? Blood Death Knight's really good at that. But I mean, this stuff is fun to play with. I like playing crop rotation. Crop rotation feels really strong. It's 4/4 in stats that you can get for 3 mana, and yeah, it dies at the end of the turn, but like, that's corpses. You just got a bunch of corpses. And they ping things really well. Of course, when they have poisonous and you combine together, it's really powerful dealing with the board, but I don't know. I wanted to talk about this. This is like the entire point of making this video, is I wanted to talk about some cards that are cool, but don't really get much talk about them anymore since they've either been nerfed, like Grimewalker, or they've rotated out of standard, and I want to talk about them. So that's my thoughts on these cards. I like playing with crop rotation, Accolade of Death. It feels really strong. If you haven't played like a Rainbow Death Knight with these cards, that's crazy, because it used to be really strong, but yeah. Then we have Demon Hunter. So Altruist, the Outcast, used to be 3 mana. It's now a 4 mana. 4/2. After you play the left or rightmost card in your hand, deal 1 damage to all enemies. So that was really strong. It was really strong in addition as well with Twin Slice, which used to be 0 mana, give your hero +1 attack. Now it's 1 mana, give your hero +2 attack. Add a second slice to your hand, which is now 1 mana to attack again. You used to play both like Twin Slice and Second Slice as 0 mana cards with your Altruist to just deal a lot of damage. You had Skull of Gul'dan. Skull of Gul'dan at 5 mana, which would draw you a bunch of cards, discount them to make your Altruist even better. You typically have like a turn 6 or so where you would just throw out all these cards, all these discounted cards, and your Altruist. You would clear your opponent's board, deal a lot of damage face, develop your own board, and that was day 1 Demon Hunter. Of course, these cards got nerfed after day 1 Demon Hunter came out. Twin Slice was nerfed, Altruist was nerfed, Skull of Gul'dan was nerfed later. I don't think Skull of Gul'dan was nerfed in day 1 Demon Hunter, if I remember correctly. But yeah, Altruist is nerfed, Twin Slice is nerfed. It's sad, because, like, this would be, like, unbelievably fair for Wild, like, not even close to levels of broken. It'd probably even suck. And we've never actually got to play with Altruist. I've brought him up before in the past about, like, cards that have never been reverted. Altruist, the Outcast, just such an unfortunate card, because could he have been good enough in Wild? Probably. Honestly, at different points in Wild's meta, since he has been nerfed, he probably could have been really good, but we'll never see that. So, it is a little sad. Altruist is simply the GOAT, though. A lot of people love this card. A lot of people loved and remember playing with him. I love you, Altruist. It's so sad. I wish I could play you in, like, odd Demon Hunter with, like, nerf Twin Slice. That'd be really funny. But yeah. I want to move through these really fast because I don't like that I've been dragging on for, like, 40 minutes to talk about cards, so I'm trying to go through these a little faster. Sorry. Then we have Druid. So, Lost in the Park Druid was really strong at different points in Standard, different points in Wild, yeah. But I want to talk about how it was so strong that it got Crypt Keeper banned from the first ever Twist format. Before we had Twist Wonders, which is the Caverns of Time, we had a like Twist Season 0 format that was called New Age. It basically was just standard without standard without neutral cards, and well, Lost in the Park was really good, and Crypt Keeper was so strong that they actually banned it. There were 3 cards, I think, that got banned. It was because, like, all the quest lines were really strong, so I think, like, Glide got banned or something. I think it was Glide, and Questline Demon Hunter, and then, you know, Crypt Keeper got banned. But this is not that, it's not that crazy to think about. This was Festival of Legends era for... Oh, no, it wasn't wild cards. Sorry, it was, standard cards. It was wild cards. Wild cards could be played. So you would just play Lost in the Park, which Questline Druid was, like, one of the best decks in the game at the point. And it didn't really run any neutrals. You ran, like, Arcane Giant, and that was about it. So you ran that together with this deck. It was fucking crazy in Twist. Nothing really had any good matchups against it because, well, it just cheats. They gain a lot of armor, they punch you in the face, they ignore all your cards, they would play Rake, which was 1 mana at the time, to, you know, destroy your minions. It's just gross. You had Spread the Word, 4 mana spell, draw 2 cards, cost 1 less for each attack your hero has, so you would draw a lot of cards. Crypt Keeper, the card I'm talking about, 8 mana, 4/6, Undead, Taunt, cost 1 less for each armor you have. And then, of course, Lost in the Park is the quest line, gain 4 armor, or sorry, gain 4 attack with your hero, reward, gain 5 armor, and then you gain more armor, or gain more attack, gain more armor, draw a card, then gain more attack, and then you get Guff the Tough, which is a 5 mana 8/8 taunt. Battlecry gave your hero 8 attack and 8 armor this turn. Or 8 armor and then 8 attack this turn, whatever. So Lost in the Park was really strong in this like stage of Hearthstone, especially in Twist, where like nothing else really worked because, well, it was just wild decks without neutral cards. So basically, you just played whatever was good in wild that didn't need neutral cards to make it good. And, well, there weren't that many things that were actually that good at that. Lost in the Park just... It provides so much value. You used to run cards like Mark of the Spike Shell, which is a 2-mana spell that gives a minion +2/+2 if it has Taunt, add a copy to your hand. So you just get a billion copies of Guff the Tough, and then you just keep hitting your opponent in the face. You never had to worry about, like, dying to aggro, because, well, you had 0 mana 4/6 taunts that also scaled, or, like, reduced themselves off your fucking armor, so you just never died to anything. Lost in the Park is... I like the deck, do not get me wrong, I enjoy playing it, but it is so fucking toxic, this card, and the archetype around it, because, well... It's a face deck. I know, like, people don't like to talk about, like, how weapon decks and stuff like that, they're all face decks. Like, hero power, like, gain attack decks, like in Druid, Rogue, Demon Hunter, they're all face decks, is the thing. Because, well, if you're gaining a lot of attack, it's only going to go face. They are face decks. But Lost in the Park just doesn't have a lot of the weaknesses of face decks. It doesn't have terrible card draw. It doesn't have negative, like, mana cheat. It doesn't have horrible, like, healing, like every other face deck. Because it's a Druid deck, and, well, Druid has great card draw, and great mana cheat, and great armor gain. So you see where I'm going with this, right? Lost in the Park is just, it's just not really a well-designed card. It's so broken. Then we have Hunter. So the Wild Seeds are, frankly, one of the most broken things Hunter has ever had. They were really strong in both Standard and Wild when they first came out. In Wild, they're kind of too slow nowadays, but, like, you can say that about a lot of things that were really strong when they came out in 2022. They just, like, stopped being strong because they just printed absurdly more powerful things, which is crazy because 2022 was an absurdly powerful year. So it's like, how do you, like, Wild Seeds are, like, literally, like, making Hunter genuinely good in Wild, to they get nerfed in Standard like 4 times, to they get reverted and they're unplayable. That's how much power creep happened between 2022 and 2024 when Wild Seeds were reverted. Yeah. Wild Seeds are just disgusting tempo. You play cards like Spirit Poachers, 2 mana 2/2, Battlecry, summon a Wild Seed. You have Stag Charge, 3 mana, deal 3, summon a Wild Seed. These ones are... Stag Charge is kind of not that great. Spirit Poacher is very... Like, okay, so not all of the Wild Seed cards were created equally. Some of them are better than others. Spirit Poacher is better than Stag Charge. For +1 mana, dealing 3 damage is not really equivalent to summoning a 2/2. To do the same thing with your Wild Seed. Erelon is the Legendary, which is a 5 mana 4/5 Battlecry, summon all 3 Wild Seeds. And then you have Wild Spirits, the best one by far. 3 mana, nature spell, summon 2 different wild seeds, make your wild seeds awaken 1 turn sooner. By far the best one, then it's Spirit Poacher, then Erelon, then Stag Charge. Like, yes, Erelon and Wild Spirits combine very well together, but like, that's like your turn 6, when you could have just played the Wild Spirits on turn 3, so you could get, you know, the Wild Seeds out sooner. You want to get them out sooner because, well, it means they're not dormant as long, and if they're not dormant as long, it means they can actually act on board, which is really good. You have the Fox Wild Seed, which is a 1 mana, 3/1 undead beast with dormant for 1 turn and rush. This one was really strong. It got nerfed to a 2/1 like as the final nerf to the package, I think. And that really did hurt. It actually finally killed it. The package was still good with Fox Wild Spirit, or Fox Spirit Wild Seed being a 3/1 because just so good at fighting for board. But, you know, after it was nerfed, it finally died. You have Bear Spirit Wild Seed, which is a 2 mana, 2/5 undead beast with taunt and dormant for 2 turns. This one was nerfed to a 2/4, which did actually cause like a big issue because although taunt can't instantly act on board like Rush can, it still is very powerful on board, so losing 1 health on your taunt minion did actually matter a lot of the time. And then you had Stag Spirit Wild Seed. This is a 3 mana, 5/4 undead beast, dormant for 3 turns. When this awakens, equip a 4/2 Great Bow. This was nerfed to a 4/3. I want to say. I'm pretty sure it was nerfed to a 4/3. I might be wrong actually. Yes, sorry. It was nerfed to a 4/3, and then the bow was nerfed to a 3/2. This one like hurt a lot because, well, yes, the 5/4, then, you know, 4/3 couldn't do anything on board, but losing +1/+1 made it a lot less threatening on that next turn, as just you got a 5/4, right? That would come out, and it could still attack. The 4/2 weapon going to a 3/2 weapon was also significant. It lowered the damage output you would get from like just high rolling the Stag Wild Seed on like turn 4 because of like Wild Spirits and Spirit Poacher. It really did hurt the class to lose these cards. They were so powerful while they're in Standard. Like, I think it's insane that we had 4 cards, like, all four of these cards, when the Wild Seeds got nerfed, they were all nerfed. But the 4 cards themselves weren't individually nerfed, which is crazy, right? Because, like, technically, there were 4 nerfs and 4 cards. But you could just refund all of them every single time they were nerfed. And that's what a lot of people do, is they would refund all these cards, figure out the Wild Seeds weren't that bad, they refund them, and they keep doing that over and over again until the final nerf to Fox Spirit, where people are like, okay, well, Wild Seeds now are unplayable. I like Wild Seeds. They're really, really strong in Standard. I think even if you put them in Standard today, they would be too strong. And it's sad, right? I wish that there was a Wild format that allowed us to play these powerful cards that aren't necessarily, like, overpowered, but just strong, rather than the Wild we have now, where it's like, okay, we can only play the really OP stuff, because you just die from hand on, like, turn 4 to combo decks, or aggro decks deal 30 damage to you on turn 3, and then everyone's just, like, ignores that. Like, Renathal has put this, like, weird fucking, like, Renathal's put this, like, weird spot of Wild where, like, yeah, I guess people would be complaining a lot more about Pirate Demon Hunter dealing 30 damage by turn 3 if Renathal didn't exist. Because, like, they would just die. They wouldn't have 10 extra health. And it's like, is Pirate Demon Hunter a symptom of Renathal, or is Renathal a symptom of Pirate Demon Hunter? So, do you need to run Renathal because Pirate Demon Hunter and Pirate decks are just so strong, or do you have to run Pirate decks and no other aggro deck because of Renathal and removal being so strong? That's how I feel about Wild personally right now. I know that doesn't necessarily relate directly to Wild Spirit, or to Wild Seeds, but that's like what I'm talking about, right? Where these cards are still very strong. The issue is that they're not as broken as all the other broken stuff around them in the game. So it's like, well, I can't really play them. I can kind of play Wild Spirits and maybe Erelon if I'm pushing it, but that's about it. Stag Charge is fucking actually unplayable. Spirit Poacher's kind of not that great. Like, it's just, it's awkward, right? It's really, really awkward. Then we have Mage. So, Deck of Lunacy is like as degenerate as it gets as a Mage deck. It's a 2-mana spell. Transform all spells in your deck into ones that cost 3 more. They keep the original cost. Then you would discount them with cards with the card Incanter's Flow, which was 2 mana. Then it was 3 mana. Now it's 4 mana. I know. of reduce the cost of spells in your deck by 1. And then with Refreshing Spring Water, which was 4 mana, now it's 5 mana. Again, I know. Draw 2 cards, refresh 2 mana crystals for each spell drawn. So Deck of Lunacy, at the time it came out in Standard, was bad. It's from Darkmoon Faire. It was a really bad card. There's nothing to use it with. But Darkmoon Faire was a 6-set meta. Forge in the Barrens, the next expansion right after, was a 4-set meta, which meant there were significantly less cards in the format that were spells, and just cards in general, I guess. So Deck of Lunacy would be consistently hitting some pretty good cards. Your 4-mana cards would pretty consistently hit, like, Flame Strikes. You had 4-mana Flame Strikes. Your 7-mana cards would always hit either Survival of the Fittest or Grand Slam. Always, because of the only 10-mana spells in the format at the time. And Deck of Lunacy was really broken. Like, really, really, really broken. If you played it on turn 2, you just, like, won the game in, like, every mirror for this deck. It was really disgusting. The whole point of the deck was to cycle through it as much as possible to get to your Deck of Lunacy, and then just play it. And then you would win through random card generation. And I hate it. I goddamn hate it. I hate random card generation. This deck, if you did not have the displeasure of playing in Standard at the time of its existence, I don't know how to describe this better than just XD random bullshit go, because that's all the deck was. There's no skill requirement to play this deck. You could be an actual Bronze 10 player versus a Legend player, and as long as you high rolled better than they did in the mirror, you would win. This is probably the easiest Hearthstone deck to ever exist, bar none, because it's just random. There's no thought process behind it. There's no anything you can do wrong. You just play cards when you can play them through your mana. You just play cards on curve, and it was disgusting. Like, what do you do if your opponent plays Deck of Lunacy on turn 1 because of the coin, versus you playing Deck of Lunacy on, like, turn 5 because that's when you drew it? You couldn't win. It just came down to who played Deck of Lunacy first. It was fucking awful. Actually, one of the worst metas ever in Hearthstone. Truly. Truly terrible. Then we have Paladin. So Tax Paladin is an archetype that we see every once in a while in Hearthstone. It really started with Forge in the Barrens introducing Sword of the Fallen. Sword of the Fallen is a 2-mana 1/2 weapon. It was 1/3. After your hero attacks, cast a secret from your deck. There's a lot of secrets of varying degrees. You could run, like, Oh My Yogg, you could run, like, Repentance, you could run Galloping Savior, a bunch of different secrets. Typically, you would run, like, Oh My Yogg, though. Oh My Yogg, of course, is a 1-mana shadow spell secret. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, they instead cast a random one of the same cost. I remember when Oh My Yogg, like, was in Standard, and, like, people would just play it on turn 1 against quest decks, and they either had to waste their coin, or if they're stupid, they would lose their quest. And that was really fucking funny, the quest lines. I digress. It also makes use of cards like Far Watchpost, or Nerebar Weblord, or, you know, Cult Neophyte, etc., to just slow down their opponent. Far Watchpost is a 2-mana 2/3, can't attack after your opponent draws a card, it costs 1 more. Up to 10. Tax Paladin has seen, like, a lot of play at a lot of different points in Hearthstone. It makes use of Call to Arms to summon a lot of powerful 2-drops, and then, you know, it just disrupts your opponent. Nerebar Weblord is a 2-mana 1/4 undead with Battlecry minions, costs 2 more. So it's had, like, a lot of different, like, decks it can target, because it targets spells, it targets Battlecry minions, it targets everything. It taxes you. And it, like, sometimes that's really good. Sometimes just you have strong enough tools, like you have your Showdown. When Showdown came out, Tax Paladin was playable again because Showdown was so strong. When else? I'm trying to think of other eras of Tax Paladin. I'm just, like, blanking. Like, Tax Paladin is not the most interesting deck ever, don't get me wrong. It's typically pretty good when it is around. Like, it's been pretty good. It's never really one of those decks that you see, like, floundering as, like, a tier 3 deck. It's usually either really good or really bad, just depending on, like, the really strong support that it gets. And that's usually what you expect from decks like this, right? That live or die by the really broken support it just received, because the deck doesn't really synergize that well together, I want to say. Like, the secrets and, like, the secret package stuff doesn't really benefit your other disruption cards, right? like, yeah, it makes it so your opponent can't play cards, but it's not buffing your own cards. Call to Arms is instead of pulling like really strong minions that want to, you know, be buffed and then synergized by other buff cards, well, you're pulling disruptive cards. So like, if the other like really powerful tools of the deck, like Showdown, aren't there, then it doesn't really work because the deck doesn't function that well together. It kind of just cheeses your opponent by making it so they can't play cards, which, you know, we do know is really strong. Making it so your opponent has less mana than you do is a really strong thing to do. There's a reason that Reno Priest has formed into the way that it has, and most other Reno decks have started to copy it. Because it's really, really, really strong to just play a card every turn that at least slows your opponent down by 1 mana a turn. At least 1 mana a turn. And that happens a lot. That's, you know, part of why Tax Paladin was so good. I wanted to talk about Tax Paladin because, like I said, it hasn't been that good in a while, and I'm kind of happy that it's not. Tax Paladin is not a fun deck to play against. It's not a fun deck to play. It's really boring, actually. It's not very popular, even when it is good. So, it feels like a deck I should be talking about, but, like, God, dude, I don't like it. I hate it. I hate Tax Paladin. I hate it. I'd rather play my good old Call to Arms Paladin that runs Dirty Rats and Millhouse Mana Storm. That's how you play. That's how you play Paladin. That's how a real man plays Paladin. Okay, Priest. So when Raza the Chained was reverted from its nerf after it was rotated into Wild, Reno Priest was the best deck in Wild for like 2 years straight. Just straight up. It was reverted in Descent of Dragons. So Raza the Chained is 5 mana 5/5 battlecry. If your deck has no duplicates, your hero power costs 0 this game. It was nerfed on rotation to hero power cost 1 because, well, they thought Raza would be too good in Wild, which was true. It would have been too good in Wild, and it was too good in Wild. They specifically nerfed Raza and Patches for fears of like them dominating Wild, and guess what? Patches dominates Wild without charge. Raza, once it got reverted, dominates Wild and has been pretty good since. You had a lot of cards that you didn't really have before in standard Reno Priest because they didn't exist yet. Zephyrus the Great came out 1 expansion before Raza was reverted, so you had like one of the strongest eras of Zephyrus ever before like 1 billion cards got nerfed. And, you know, I guess now they're buffed, but Zephyrus is a little bit weaker than he used to be. Just as time goes on, Zephyrus falls off. You know, his use cases have become a little less. Typically, nowadays, when you're running Zephyrus, you use him for, like, a Fireball, a Flare, a Miracle... Wild Growth. Sorry, you use him for Wild Growth. Sometimes you use him for, like, Jiraxis. But in the past, you used to use Zephyrus a lot of the time for, like, a lot of different removals, for, like, silencing minions, stuff like that, and he just isn't that good at doing that stuff anymore. Like, mana-wise, he's just too expensive at doing stuff like that. So he's kind of more like more of a niche use case of a card rather than, like, the do-everything card he used to be. This version of Reno Priest still ran Shadow Reaper Anduin. Shadow Reaper Anduin is, of course, the card that made Raza the Chain broken in the first place. 8 mana, hero card, battlecry, destroy all minions, 5 or more attack, 5 armor, and then the hero power is deal 2 damage after you play a card, refresh your hero power. So when your hero power costs 0, Raza was really good with it. So this era of Reno Priest is one of my least favorite ever. It was just like a slow grinder deck that didn't really do anything aside from ping you down. It would sometimes like draw Spawn of Shadows, so it could deal more damage. Spawn of Shadows has was a 5 mana 5/4 with Inspire, deal 4 damage to both heroes. Now it's a 5 mana 5/5 Battlecry and Inspire, deal 4 damage to both heroes. So it like didn't have consistent ways to deal more damage. It was really slow and grindy. I think when it first came back to Wild, you ran a full dragon package. Don't quote me on that. I just think that that's what it was because it came out in Descent of Dragons, which had a lot of powerful dragons. But like this version of Reno Priest, it just what could you possibly do? Because it ran the dragon package. Again, don't quote me. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it ran. Because it ran the dragon package, it had a really like a lot of powerful removal cards with your oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called. It's from Kobolds and Catacombs. It's a 4 mana 3/3 dragon. If you're holding a dragon, deal 3 damage to all minions. You had that. You had Alexstrasza, which before, again, Alexstrasza was nerfed, because Alexstrasza wasn't nerfed right away. So you still had the Alexstrasza Lifebinder, which is a 9-mana, 8/8 Battlecry, add 2 random dragons to your hand. They cost 0, if your deck has no duplicates, sorry. And that was really strong. The deck was just like a big value pile that would ping you down and like draw out games. Nowadays, Reno Priest is a lot more interesting because, like I've said, it plays more on curve. You're not running Shadow Reaper Anduin, you're running Raza the Resealed and Dark Bishop Benedictus, so you're online a lot earlier into the game. And the games just go by so much faster. You don't really run a lot of value pile stuff anymore because you don't need to. You can actually kill your opponent like a lot more consistently because, well, you don't need to get to 8 mana to play your Anduin to start pinging. You just have to get to play both Razas to start pinging. So it was really good that way. I like the new Reno Priest. I really do. I think that it has partially come from the fact that you do run Dark Bishop Benedictus, that Reno Priest is like in this way more interesting state than back when you ran the heal. I think it's called Lesser Heal is the Priest hero power. Back when you had Lesser Heal as your hero power, you could run Northshire Cleric, and that's what you did in the deck, but let's be real here. What's more powerful? Not having to run Shadow Reaper Anduin and your hero power deals 2 damage, or running Northshire Cleric and your hero power heals and you have to run Anduin? Yeah. I wonder what's better, guys. I really do. I don't know. Reno Priest is just one of those like decks that's always been good since Raza's been reverted, but the best time for this deck ever was in the 2019-2020 era. I know I didn't get to talk. I didn't get as deep into this one as I should have. I don't want to talk about Reno Priest anymore, man. I had to like talk about this exact subject at least once because I haven't yet. Talking about, you know, Raza when he was reverted. It's just like I don't care. I didn't play. I wasn't playing Reno Priest back then, so I can't really talk that much about it. I feel kind of bad because, like, yes, I do like Reno Priest and all that, but I wasn't playing it back in 2019, 2020. You know what I was doing in 2019 and 2020? I was playing fucking Dragon Hunter, okay? I was playing Dragon Hunter during Descent of Dragons. Are you guys happy now that I was playing Dragon Hunter? And then in 2020 was Forge in the Barrens. You know what I was playing in Forge in the Barrens? I was playing Face Hunter. Okay, guys, so I'm sorry that I'm not the most up-to-date on your 2019-2020 Reno Priest and Wild list, but I was playing more fun decks. So, yeah, okay, guys, yeah. Okay, so then we have Mech Rogue. So Mech Rogue on Titan's release was disgusting. Lab Recruiter is a 5-mana 3/3 mech with, at the end of your turn, summon a copy of this, Forge, gain Magnetic. This used to be 4 mana, and you would just give it Stealth. I wish I was joking. You would magnetize it onto a stealth minion, either from Murmuron, the Mastermind, 3-mana, 2/5 mech. After you play a mech, get a random one of Murmuron's gadgets. Oh god, I don't remember they're off the top of my head. I should have had them on my slide. Oh no. Okay, sorry. So it is Mimmeron's Coolant, 0 mana. The next card you play this turn costs 2 less. Mimmeron's Blades, 1 mana, deal 3 damage. Mimmeron's Cloak Field, 1 mana, give a friendly minion +3 attack. It gains stealth until your next turn. This one I was talking about. Mimmeron's Horn, give a minion taunt and divine shield. Mimmeron's Rewinder, 1 mana, return a minion to its owner's hand. And Mimmeron's Switch, 1 mana, choose 2 minions, they swap stats. So using Mimmeron's gadgets, you would be able to either buff your Lab Constructor by giving it stealth so that it would summon more copies of it, or you would magnetize it onto something, of course. You would magnetize stealth with the Spider Bot, which is 3 mana, 3/4 mech with magnetize stealth for 1 turn. You could use like Coppertail Snoop to give it a lot of stats. Coppertail Snoop used to be a 3 mana 4/3, now it's 3 mana 3/2. Mech, Beast, Magnetic, whenever this attacks, get a coin. So it's all about like going hard in on this Lab Constructor, because once you were able to stick a Lab Constructor, maybe give it stealth, you just put more and more and more mechs on it, and it would keep summoning more and more and more Lab Constructors that were larger and larger and larger, and yeah, it was really, really strong. This deck was like, it was like one of the first nerfs of Titans, Lab Constructor. It was still really good after the nerfs. It even like, okay, so it was so good, in fact, that it was like a really, really, really botted deck in Standard. It was like the most botted deck in Standard. We were dealing with bots in Hearthstone like really bad at the time. We don't see them as much anymore. Blizzard has thankfully done something about it. But at the time, we would see so many bots. So when rotation happened, again, there's still a lot of bots in the game at the time. The bots couldn't play Standard anymore. They all had Mech Rogue built as a deck, but they couldn't play Standard anymore. So what did they do? They played Wild. And full Standard, like, pre-rotation Mech Rogue in early Whizbang's Workshop Wild was, like, beating people on ladder. I don't know how. I really don't. But people were losing to it on ladder, and, like, shouldn't that, like, not be happening? I think people are just, like, heavily underestimating, like, how powerful some Standard decks are, and, like, I still, like, firmly believe that with some tweaks, like, pre-nerf Sludge Warlock in Standard, like, with some tweaks for Wild, could have been, like, a genuinely powerful Wild deck, because, again, people were playing that deck, no changes, on Wild ladder, and doing pretty well. So, like, this, like, Mech Rogue really does, like, say, hey, is Standard that much weaker than Wild right now? At least this deck did, right? Because, again, people were winning on it. Or, well, not people. Bots were winning on it in Wild. And bots don't exactly play very well. So, for them to be beating, like, real humans with this deck says kind of a lot. I never ran into any of the bots, so I don't know if it was, like, a low MMR thing and I just missed out on it. Maybe it was a high MMR thing and I missed out on it. I don't really know, but it was not balanced. Like, this Lab Constructor card, how did it get printed at 4 mana? It's Forge, right? So you bank the mana earlier, you play, you know, your stealth minions, yada yada, and then, like, you just keep replicating all of your magnetic minions forever. And it's just like, well, once it gets big enough that your opponent can't really remove it, for some decks that does happen, damn, dude, you just get fucked. You just got fucked. Like, actually, that's all that happened. Back in my day, we played 1 mana 1/3 that gained +1 attack when you played 2 mana 3/4. And then, you didn't have a strong turn 3, but your turn 4, you play 4 mana 7/7 that gave you 1/3 to attack. Yeehaw! Tunnel Trog, Flame Wreath Faceless, and Totem Golem. So these are super iconic cards in Hearthstone. You know, people, like, fondly remember losing to Overload Aggro Shaman, as it was really balanced. It was really weak even. Yeah, guys, this was super weak. It was so weak at the time. Tunnel Trog was not a super broken 1-drop for its time. Not at all. Haha. I mean, it's just what it is, right? You play Curve Stone and Shaman, you play a 1/3 into a 3/4. You didn't have that strong of a turn 2, or turn 3, so you'd either, like, Hero Power, you would play, like, Spirit Claws. You had a lot of, like, cards you could be playing. You could play, trying to think. There's just a bunch of cards that could have been played to fill out your turn 3, but typically you would then end it with a 4 mana 7/7 that overloads for 2, give your Tunnel Trog another 2 attack, and your opponent was not happy after that. Yeah, I know we always, like, meme about 4 mana 7/7, but it was good for its time. Nowadays, a 4 mana 7/7 with no text probably doesn't see play in any class, like, with no text. Maybe if it had a tribe, like if it was a beast, hunter probably could make it work, or like a dragon or a mech or something, it'd probably be okay, but like Flame Wreath Faceless was a 4 mana 7/7 with a downside back in the day, and it was really strong, so yeah. This one, again, I have played Hearthstone on and off since the game came out. I will say that. I very, like, somehow missed this era, because I was a high school student. I cared more about, like, girls and League of Legends than Hearthstone. Let's be real here. Those were both better in, like, 2016 than Hearthstone. I know, guys. I'm sorry. Season 6 was pretty cool. Sorry, guys. Season 6 was pretty cool of Hearthstone, or of League of Legends. Sorry. So I was more focused on that kind of stuff. 2016, I would have been 14 years old. So I would have been a freshman in high school, actually. Oh, yeah. Or not 24. Yeah, 2016. Oh, yeah. So that makes sense why I was not fucking paying attention to this. But, I don't know. Whenever you hear stories about this, you hear people talk about, like, the tempo that you just gained from playing your Overload didn't have that big of a downside at the time, which it kind of didn't. You know, Overload as a keyword gets worse and worse as Hearthstone goes on, but in the past, like, +1/+1 for Overload 1 used to be worth it over, like, a base card. Overload 2, I mean, it's +3 +2 over Yeti for Overload 2, right? So it makes sense. Overload as a mechanic nowadays is kind of just like shoehorned into cards to make them like kind of synergize together, which is not that interesting if you ask me. You're never really getting punished for playing Overload cards on curve like you used to because, well, you just don't play them on curve. They're bad. I think that this kind of Overload Shaman could really be redone by Blizzard if they would like to, and I don't see any issue. I'm going to be so goddamn real. If you put Tunnel Trog in core Hearthstone, it would not be that strong. Like, what is really good with it? Lightning Bolt from fucking 8 years ago? Lightning Bolt? Yeah. Yeah. So, Darkest Hour Warlock. Darkest Hour Warlock. Where do I begin with this? Rise of Shadows was a time for Hearthstone. It really was. We just, like... So, the way that Darkest Hour works is it's a 6-mana spell, destroy all friendly minions. For each one, summon a random minion from your deck. You would basically just run no actual minions. You would run a lot of gigantic minions. I think you did run Voidcaller. Don't quote me on that, but I think you did still run Voidcaller because you did have like a lot of big demons. But you would play cards like Reform Scheme, which is a 3-mana spell, summon a 1/1 imp at the end of your turn, increase. Or was it 2 imps? I don't remember. I don't remember Reform Scheme, dude. The scheme cards were terrible outside of like niche scenarios. Like Hagatha's Scheme was pretty good, but that's kind of it. Togwaggle Scheme was okay. Who cares? That's not important. You play like Reform Scheme or Fiendish Circle. Fiendish Circle was 4 mana to summon 4 imps. Now it's 3 mana to summon 4 1/1 imps. Then you would play Blood Bloom, which was 2 mana at the time. Then it got nerfed because of Darkest Hour. The next spell you cast this turn costs health instead of mana. So you'd be able to play Darkest Hour on like turn 4 or 5 pretty consistently. You would destroy like 3 or 4 imps, and then you would summon like Void Lords. 9 mana, 3/9, Demon, Taunt, Death Rattle, summon 3 1/3 Demon to Taunt. Mal'Ganis, which was 9 mana, 9/7. Your hero's immune. All other demons have +2/+2. You'd summon Ragnaros. You'd summon the Lich King. You'd summon anything you want. Basically, any giant minion you wanted. You could summon Gruul if you wanted to. It didn't matter because you just put so many stats on board that your opponent really couldn't deal with it. We didn't have like hyper efficient like combo hard removal that we have today. Like Barov doesn't exist. What am I trying to think of? Zephyrus didn't exist at the time yet, so Zephyrus couldn't deal with it. So it's just like, yes, Darkest Hour today couldn't be that great, I guess, and you probably shouldn't revert Blood Bloom anyway. But at the time, this Darkest Hour card was so broken. Like, I already have talked about a billion times that I hate big decks. I hate big decks. I think that they, like, are more oppressive against removal than they should be. You should not be able to cheat out a 10-drop on turn 5. You just shouldn't. I don't think that that's fair for the game. I think that if you get a 10-drop on turn 5, well, what the fuck? Especially when it's really easy, like Muckmorpher. Like, what? What condition is being met to play Muckmorpher? There just isn't. So getting like 10 drops out or like 9 drops out on turn like 5 or 6 is just not fair. It wasn't fair for the game. And like, yeah, the game has evolved nowadays to like, you do have this kind of like combo hard removal, right? You have your Barov, you have like Dreadscale Bloom, you have Flurgle Tox, you have stuff like that, right? But I mean, can you imagine playing against this deck when that stuff didn't exist? Like I said, Zephyrus didn't even exist at the time because this is Rise of Shadows, which is one expansion before Old Doom. The worst part is that like, this is the intended use case of Darkest Hour, is to play it like this. So, like, did they think it would be fun for anyone? Like, how did they think this would actually work in Standard? Because it obviously didn't work in Standard. I mean, we all know, anyone that, like, knows about Rise of Shadows knows what was really good in Rise of Shadows. It was Control Warrior and like, Giants Mage, but whatever. So, like, I don't know. Darkest Hour just, like, perplexes me as a card. Yeah, perplexes. And I have to talk about it, because I haven't talked about it yet, really. And I want to talk about some cards that are really broken and just don't really make sense. And that's what this whole video is kind of about, right? And then lastly, we have Warrior. So it's really funny because I talk about not wanting to do a 40-minute video, but this video is exactly almost 40 minutes. Anyway, so Ziliax Deluxe 3000 is broken. We all know this card's been nerfed a billion times. It is like still in like 60% of decks, and it's been nerfed so many times, so many different ways. It's just a disgusting card. There is a combination of Ziliax called Unkilliax, Perfect Module and Virus Module. I'm not reading them out. I'm not trying to... I don't care. And it would basically summon a 9 mana 4/5 with Rush, Lifesteal, Taunt, Divine Shield, Elusive, and Reborn. So, yeah. That's cool. You summon a giant taunt, or not giant, but a pretty big taunt minion with a billion keywords. It heals you. You can't remove it, like hard removal it. It's just really toxic. So what does Blizzard in their infinite wisdom do? Well, they gave you Inventor Boom to go with it, but Inventor Boom was kind of not that good for a long time. Let's be real here. It is like... Inventor Boom kind of didn't really take off as being like an actually good Ziliax card until Hydration Station came out. Inventor Boom, of course, is 8 mana 7/7. Resurrect 2 different friendly mechs that would cost 5 or more. They attack random enemies. It used to just be resurrect 2 friendly mechs that died. So you could resurrect 2 Ziliaxes, which is, again, part of the issue. And then Hydration Station, which is 8 mana Druid spell, because of the Tourist. Resurrect 3 of your highest cost taunt minions. So, or 3 of your different highest cost taunt minions. So again, these 2 cards were nerfed because of Unkilliax. They used to be able to summon more, like multiple copies of the same card, but it was way too strong. The reason it was too strong is that you had, because you were a Druid Tourist, you would run the new card, New Horizons, which is a 3 mana spell, gain an empty mana crystal, increase your max mana to 13. So you would ramp in Warrior. You could run Trail Mix, which is a 2 mana spell that just reads, or I think it's gain 2 mana crystals next turn only. So you'd play Trail Mix on 2 or 3, and then if you're on the coin, you could coin out Chemical Spill, or, you know, if you didn't have the coin, you do it on turn 4. But Chemical Spill is a 5 mana spell that is summon your highest cost minion and deal 5 damage to it. And since, well, Ziliax has Divine Shield, it would just be summoning the Ziliax without Divine Shield. Then because, well, you had that Ziliax out early out in the game, you would just be able to resummon it multiple times. Pretty easily, even. Yeah. It's not really a surprise that they nerfed these cards. Like, Unkilliax is already a Ziliax, like, something people hated to play against. They hated playing against, like, 1 or 2 of them. So can you imagine playing against a maximum of, like, what? 9 of them? No, even more, because Inventor Boom, again, would have its battle cry doubled by Deep Miner Brand. So you would summon 4 from Inventor Boom, 6 from Hydration Stations, and then your original one. So 11 Unkilliaxes. Yeah. That also doesn't include all the ones that would get resummoned because they have Reborn. So, like, 22 different Unkilliaxes? Holy shit, dude. Like, how did Blizzard think that would be fair to play against or fun to play against? It obviously wasn't, and they nerfed it, but, like, I'm so thankful that I did not play Standard during early Perils in Paradise. I think that the only reason I've started playing Standard now is because of the mini set. The mini set was just, like, kind of good. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you, I think Big Spell Mage was good for the meta, like, to make the meta more fun. Yeah, it was toxic, don't get me wrong, but, like, I play Wild, so it made the meta feel more like what Wild should be like, or at least Wild felt like 2 years ago. And, you know, Wild doesn't feel like that anymore, but Standard kind of does. Standard's kind of feeling like Wild used to. You take that as you will, but, yeah. That's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think down below. Did you have any good or bad experiences playing with or against these cards? I'd love to hear it. But guess what? It's reveal season. So starting yesterday, but today at the time I'm recording this, I am giving out 2 regular bundles for the Great Dark Beyond out of my pocket. I'm going to pick the winner on November 1st. But to enter, all you have to do is subscribe, like the video, and comment down below your favorite card that has been revealed so far. Don't fucking do any spoilers. Like, you're such a piece of shit if you do that. I will ban you from my YouTube channel. I don't give a shit. And you can't win, obviously. or you can become a member to my channel. Becoming a member is just like a Twitch subscription. I have emotes, stuff like that. You don't have to, guys, if you guys don't want to, but it really does help out, and it does help to fund this giveaway that I'm doing, so I really appreciate it. That's gonna be it for me, though. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what